The Square Ball Podcast.
Welcome to the show, special international break show. Dan here, along with Michael, in a show that's brought to you by West Yorkshire Electrical. If it's got wires, they will work with it. Should we say powered by West Yorkshire Electrical?
Hey, it's a good one, that.
Yeah, might start using that.
Powered by solar or by battery storage, two things they do. We're not here, we're in the office. We haven't got those things. But if we wanted them and we're willing to pay for them, that's where I'd go.
Thanks.
So,
yeah, great.
Likewise, if I wanted fire alarms or CCTV and stuff.
But you needed to spread the cost. There's finance available.
Cost there is.
For your homework and your business work. And what if you locate, it's called West Yorkshire Electrical, but what if I'm in North Yorkshire or even East Yorkshire?
No, it's fine.
They'll go there?
Yeah, they'll go there.
Oh, that's good of them, isn't it? And what if I'm just outside? I'm not lucky enough to live in Yorkshire. I'm outside of Yorkshire.
Speak to them anyway.
Yeah.
You never know.
No, they will.
All right, okay.
Yeah, they will. That's what I'm teeing you up for.
Okay, right, cool.
Anyway, we're doing an international break special now. Checking in on old friends. So we're heading off to Italy, and we'll explain why as we go here. Introduce our guest for today as well, Chris McMenamy. Chris, you're a Leeds fan as well?
Unfortunately so, yeah.
From Northern Ireland?
Unfortunately so, yeah.
And cover the Italian game as well?
Yeah, fortunately so, I would say.
So how did that come about, first of all, and where did the interest come from? And obviously give a plug to TMG Italia.
Yeah, I'm sort of used to it now because people say, oh, you're a Leeds fan, why are you a Leeds fan? Well, my dad. But then I can't really say why you're like a fan of Italian football. Like, you're not looking at my face and going, oh, he's obviously got relatives from Naples.
That olive complexion.
Oh, yeah. I think it was mostly just from like growing up. For me, it was watching the Champions League on a Tuesday and Wednesday, and you would get like, Arsenal versus Lyon on a Tuesday and then Milan Deportivo on a Wednesday. So I've always sort of been into it since I was a kid, but more so in the last few years. It was probably a little bit of an escape from Leeds to have something that wasn't Leeds, and then in the last couple of years I just decided to start writing about it, and that's where TMG Italia came into it.
Because you're too young for the Channel 4 era.
Well, I do remember Golazzo, because I used to think he said Golazio, and I was like, oh, he didn't know they were aligned to the far right on Channel 4. But yeah, I remember that, and then it was on Channel 5 for a while, but that was like the real dark days of Serie A, where like games were being called off for fans getting shot on the way to the stadium, and I mean, it was between God knows what and Channel 4. Or Channel 5, sorry.
So where do we find TMG Italia then? Give a plug for the socials, website and all that.
At TMG Italia on Twitter and Instagram, and tmgitalia.net. We've got a newsletter now which covers some sensible Italian football stuff, and then I'll try and throw a Leeds reference in there whatsoever. I mean, Tomaso Bianchi got a shout out this week. It's probably the most positive news he's had in the last few years, I would say.
I suspect we're going to get onto him at some point during this chat. So Italy, the obvious jump off point then is Willy Gnonto. We're in the international break. He's been relegated from the Italy grown-up squad to the 21s. And well, you wonder what sort of impact that's going to have on his opinion about Leeds and the progress of his career so far. But we are actually recording a couple of days ago now. He scored for the 21s against San Marino. Were they playing? Yeah. So bit of a local derby.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the Italy squad, it's certainly not a classic squad, but there are 5 wingers there who are all better players than Gnonto, and they're all playing in top leagues, and they're actually starting, which Gnonto isn't. Gnonto, I mean, I thought last week in the Plymouth game, he was like, I know he only came on for a few minutes, but he just didn't really look that bothered. I don't think much this season. He hasn't looked like the player that he should in the Championship. Like when you compare him to Somerville, who has ripped the Championship apart, like he should be doing that week in, week out. And you do wonder how much everything that happened this summer has played a role in that. But there's no reason he should be in the Italy squad. I don't think he was dropped because of everything that's going on. I think there are just better options there.
Do you think maybe him being elevated to the senior squad has maybe distorted his view, maybe his agent's view as well, of his position in the world? And was it more of a thing that Mancini, when he was the Italy boss, because he's not anymore, obviously, kind of brought him forward, accelerated his progress a little bit because he liked him in particular, and now it's kind of regressing to the mean a little bit, but in the meantime it's kind of distorted his own perception of himself?
I think Mancini's a bit of a dramatic, so I think him actually picking Gnonto was kind of saying, I have so little attacking options, I have to pick this guy from the Swiss League who's 18, who, although he was playing quite well in the Swiss League, like, I don't think Mancini would want to be picking an 18-year-old in that team. And granted, he came in and he did well. Like, I remember they drew 0-0 with England. They played them at Wolves ground. It's like last summer 2022, and he played quite well. But like, you know, you shouldn't be playing a player that age unless they're, you know, Jude Bellingham or somebody. Like, you're Italy. Italy shouldn't be playing an 18-year-old who plays for Zurich, let alone an 18-year-old who's playing for Leeds at the bottom of the Premier League.
What's the perception of him then in Italy at the minute then?
I don't think there really is one. I was looking at the tweets around when he played against San Marino and he scored the 2 goals, and there was a couple of people saying, "Oh, I'd love to see him sign for X," and you're going, "Well, that's all well and good, but none of those teams have any money to spend." I mean, talking about, "Oh, I'd love to see him sign for Inter Milan on loan in January," and on loan is what it would be, because they're not spending. If Leeds want 20 million, like, no one in Italy is spending 20 million on anyone, let alone Gnonto in January, unless, you know, you lose a player, in which case you probably want somebody a bit more proven than a 19-year-old, 20-year-old who's not really playing in the Championship.
Did you know much about him before he signed for Leeds, having seen him for Italy and stuff? Because he was, I'll be honest, I'd not seen a single minute of his until I was watching bits on YouTube when it seemed he was arriving.
I knew him from Football Manager.
Right.
Back when he was known as a Degnand Wilfred Gnonto, so he wasn't even Wilfred. It wasn't. I don't think his actual first name, but he was like a striker at Inter Milan and was always one of those like wonder kid players in the game. And then he went to Zurich, which a lot of like Inter Academy players seem to like either go to Switzerland, like DeMarco, who's their left back now. He went to Switzerland for a couple of years and came back. They'll leave for Switzerland or leave just to go and get first team football somewhere else, because not that many players break into the first team at a young age in Italy. So I knew of him as a sort of short striker, but which he did play quite a lot to the centre in Zurich. I think Leeds was the first time he's really been used out and out as a winger. So, and he played as a striker for the 21s as well.
Just talking about big fees in Italy has just made my mind cast to Charles de Ketelaere, who obviously Milan nicked him from under our Premier League noses, and he's gone now from Milan. Was that fee that they forked out for him something of an exception to the rule then in Italy at the minute?
Yeah, that was a big punt, and Paolo Maldini was their director of football. He was sacked in April time maybe, or sacked towards the end of last season. I'm trying to think, did they sell anyone that summer? I don't think they did. I suppose they sold Tonali this summer, which might have paid for some of it, but that's quite a large fee to be spent on someone who wasn't proven. Like, Milan have spent a bit more money, and they spent a lot of money this summer, but like, I don't see them. Well, they don't need a winger. Inter might feel that they need another attacker. Juventus, but all those teams, like the 2 teams are linked with Gnonto, Lazio and Roma. Neither of them are going to be spending upwards of 10-15 million unless they absolutely have to.
Do you think we've dodged a bullet then with de Ketelaere?
I don't know. I mean,
we've obviously gone down, so it's not like we can say we had the last laugh.
Yeah,
but in terms of how his career has gone, in Italy.
Well, going to Atalanta is kind of like, it's a bit of a rescue project. So they obviously see something in him. They're like the original Brighton. They're what sort of Brighton probably would have based themselves off, I'd say. Like, if you look at, they have a huge footprint around Italy of players that are playing at top levels, like and even like academy players, like Kulusevski at Spurs was at Atalanta. Atalanta picked Romero from Spurs. They picked him up from Juventus and turned him into like a quality player and made a huge profit on him. So I think they obviously see something in him. I actually haven't watched that much of Atalanta this season, but I think he scored in one of his early games, I'm pretty sure. Because I remember the whole thing, like, oh, he didn't score all last season. Of course he scores, like a very Leeds way to look at it. Go, well, of course he scores in his first game. But he's very young.
Yeah.
You can't, I don't want to discard players. I saw people saying, like, oh, you know if a player's good when they're 18, 19. Like, I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, it takes time to settle in any club, doesn't it? And changing countries. And it seems like a bit of a home bird, does the Ketelaere, like, still live with his mum or whatever. He did. I don't know if he still does. You tend to follow the football mums around, don't you? So
yes, that's right. Yeah,
Mrs. de Ketelaere.
She's fine. Yeah, she's settling well.
Yeah.
I mean, on the late blooming thing, you've got Calvin Phillips as well, who is our example of when he was 18, 19. You looked at him in the Leeds team and you were like, yeah, he seems fine. He seems like a perfectly functional midfielder, and then has gone on to be brilliant and is now potentially on his way to Italy.
Yeah, that's an exciting one. because I'd seen, he's linked to Spurs and he's linked to Newcastle. I mean, him going to Newcastle would just be the most unromantic, horrendous move, to just go there and take, 400 grand a week to clap for the Saudis. Juventus feels like there's like an element of the John Charles about it. Like I quite like it, even if it would only be for a 6-month loan. But
good honest club like Juventus he needs to go to.
Oh,
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Never bent the rules, those guys.
Yeah, Calvin, don't talk to the referees. It's sorted already. Don't say anything.
How's that been perceived over there as well then, in the Italian media?
Gazzetta, we're talking about a Gazzetta dello Sport, which is the main paper over there. They were talking about it yesterday, and it was sort of saying about how they call him Pirlo, but he's more like Pitbull, which is a reference to Gattuso. And I think that's fair.
As opposed to the US
Mr. Worldwide
comedy rapper, Mr. 305.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe to some of Calvin's family, he would be considered Mr. Worldwide, going to Turin. Like, that's a big move. I know when his late granny was alive, she didn't want to move him to Birmingham, so I wonder what she would have thought of Turin.
Posh.
Yeah, I know.
Posh over there. Do we need Calvin getting on the pasta and the pizza? I suspect not.
Well, I mean, this is the thing when they say about like the diet out there. If you look at Lukaku is at his physical best when he was living in Milan, and then he went to Chelsea, and like just I don't know if he necessarily ballooned, but it's like a Formula One car. One small thing goes wrong and the whole machine stops working. Like,
yeah.
He looks a lot better, and I think
it's just a lazy stereotype, isn't it?
I know,
pizza,
I know.
But you do wonder, don't you?
Yeah, I don't think they're eating like Dolmio over there with loaded with sugar and salt. I think.
Could you imagine?
I think they're picking it from someone's garden and then going here. By the way, but there was that whole clip of McKennie whenever he was in the Juventus documentary asking about ranch sauce and
the absolute disgust on the faces of
Chiellini was going to strangle him to death there and then.
Do you think Calvin would do all right in Turin? Is there a need for him in that Juventus side, do you think?
I think there is. So if you look at they play like a 3-5-2 at the minute, and they have McKennie playing in midfield. So I mean, cue the shudders of anyone listening to this thinking of Weston McKennie in centre midfield. But they've got a couple of decent sort of more attack orientated midfielders playing further back. So I could see Phillips coming in, sits in front of the back three, lets those two midfielders push on a little bit. The one of the opinion pieces about him said that this is the final cog for us to win the league. So, I mean, no pressure there.
With McKennie actually in the team, what has happened to him? Because I don't think we ever saw the right version of him, did we? It felt like he came in and then Adams was injured, and then it became clear we were going down and he wasn't staying anyway, and it just felt like his heart was not in it from quite early on. But like, what is he like as a player? Because I've seen him play for the USA a few times, watched him play multiple times for Leeds, and was consistently poor.
Yeah,
but to get in the team like Juventus, you've got to be half decent.
Well, he's playing as a right wing back at times, somewhere between midfield and right wing back. But Juventus, like it's 3-5-2, probably 5-3-2, men behind the ball type of football. They played Fiorentina a couple of weeks ago. They went 1-0 up after like 8 minutes, had one shot the whole game, 21% possession. Like, it's not an up and down.
That's a classic Italian performance, isn't it?
The Italian league is sort of, it's gone the other way. Like, it's become quite exciting, but Allegri is sort of like, no, we're going to do it my way. We're going to sit back and defend and defend and defend. And a lot of teams, like even with Leeds under Bielsa, there was times where teams would sit back and all Leeds would do is hit crosses at them, and you've got 3 defenders in there just heading away absolutely everything. So that's sort of how Juventus have been playing this season. People call it like Allegri ball or terrorist ball and stuff like that, like the sort of football Twitter nonsense. But I think McKennie, I did see someone say he's great when he plays at wing back, but when he plays in midfield, he's pointless because he's no creativity, which you can sort of get from watching him play for Leeds. I went to see Juventus play Inter Milan about 2 years ago, and he was playing in as the advanced midfielder in a 4-4-2, and I didn't really know that much about him other than having seen him in like video games before. But like, I was like, this guy's dreadful. He couldn't pick a pass to save his life.
Really?
Like, he was just abysmal. Like, he was not and then I looked him up after, and it's like, oh, he's more of a defensive midfielder. But he was playing as like a sort of pseudo number 10.
Yeah, it's the same question I've got. I don't really know what he does. What does he do? What is his?
He seems to like the engine to play as a deep line defensive midfielder, but then, like you said, didn't have the creativity to be threading through balls.
Yeah, he does look a bit more at home at wing back because all he really has to do is defend. And
so it's not a wing back that's going up past the halfway line.
Really, no. Because on the other side they'll have Kostic, who's more of a winger. So it's like one of those sort of like hybrid formations where it's like a 3-5-2 or a 4-4-2.
Right, it'll switch according to which side you're on or whatever.
Yeah, so like you have a more attacking player on one side and then Weston McKennie on the other. The enigma.
Yeah. A strange thing. I felt like we never saw the best of him, or never saw him full stop, really, did we? He just seemed to just turn up and just mooch around for a bit and then go. It was weird. I think in years to come we'll look back on it as a really enigmatic period.
Physically, he still looks the same though. Still looks like a bit too big to be playing football.
Yeah, but I don't think he does have like quite a big face. Like he's always had quite a big face, and I think it's fine to have a big frame. But I don't like. I know Leeds fans have called him fat and stuff like that. But you look at him at Juventus, he doesn't look any different. But nobody really seems to talk about that there. I think they just more consider him as like he's not very good unless he's just, up and down, making tackles, interceptions, giving it to more creative players.
By his own admission, he was not in shape when he was at Leeds. He said, didn't he, in an interview more recently, that was the case.
Yeah, I moved to Leeds in early March and it was very cold and I wasn't in shape. So I know how he feels.
I was going to say, I'm not going to be pointing any fingers at all. But is the talk of a new contract for him then, potentially, at Juve?
If it's not already done, it seems to be in the process of being done. Although I think it might only be to 2025. So they weren't really sure what to do with him in the summer, but they're another one. So Pogba, he's been done for doping. So I think he's banned for 2 years. And then Nicolo Fagioli was the first one to be banned for the betting scandal. He's out for 10 months, which is also why they're linked with Calvin Phillips. But they've not got much of a squad. Like they're quite threadbare beyond the starting 11, which is obviously why Phillips is also linked. And your old friend Rodrigo de Paul has been linked. So could you imagine a midfield of Calvin Phillips, Weston McKennie and Rodrigo de Paul? Wow, when worlds collide. Man, speaking of worlds colliding, Tomaso Bianchi weighed in on the Calvin to Juventus thing. He was the obvious go-to guy for joining the clubs up. Sadly, in the absence of John Charles, we had to go to Bianchi. Yeah, that's sort of like whenever you see, I don't want to name any websites and get ourselves in trouble here, but it's one of those more clickbaity websites, and they're like, Star Striker says Patrick Bamford needs to eat more greens, and then it's like Frank McAvenny, and you're like, well, why are you asking Frank McAvenny about Leeds? So what did Bianchi have to say then about Calvin? Good idea, bad idea, or was he just talking about Leeds, really? I didn't even see this until this morning. I think he's basically just saying, sign him. Yeah, I can imagine the interview was kind of like someone's just rang Bianchi and said, hi, I'm from Tudo Sport or whatever the website is. Do you fancy answering some questions about Calvin Phillips? And he's like, yeah, I could probably do with the €50. So, because he's playing in the 5th division now. Oh, wow. Yeah. I was going to say fall from grace, but. Well, yeah, I mean, he's playing like, it is semi-professional. So you can't have a professional contract at that division. So I'm not sure. I don't know if he's taking up a second job. I could see him as like a PE teacher or something. Spare time, yeah.
He can bring Dave Hockaday, can't he, for tips? Being a PE teacher, so it's perfect.
I'll tell you what, let's talk about Cellino and the Cellino landfill, all that era, in just a bit, because I think it's probably important we catch up on our loan players who are at Roma.
You just said that, playing right wing back in that league isn't too difficult, so is someone making it look difficult by any chance?
What are you doing? I was convinced he was going to be a centre back when he moved there, because I saw Allardyce used him as a centre back, and maybe Mourinho was like, oh, my prodigal son, Sam Allardyce, bring him in as a centre back. But no, he started the season, he played the first game as a right wing back, and I remember talking to you saying, look at the highlights of the game, because there's like a 36-year-old winger called Antonio Candreva, who is, he is the Pablo of Salernitana. Like he was a fantastic player in his day, but he's also 36, and he just tore him inside out. Like, it was so bad. He's lost his place now to a guy called Rick Karsdorp, who I'm like 99% sure Mourinho was just like publicly calling out and saying that he wanted rid of him and he was a fraud and he's this, that and the other last year. So it shows you how desperate things are, that they brought back the guy who Mourinho desperately wanted rid of.
I cannot for the life of me understand. Well, I was going to say either move. Llorente is doing slightly better, isn't he, in that he's featuring. But it doesn't make sense to me, none of it.
Llorente did have moments of looking like a good footballer.
Yeah,
I know he had some complete catastrophic performances as well, in things where he had periods where just everything went wrong. But at times he looked like a competent player.
Yeah. He was just a bit out there. But Kristensen, yeah.
Well, Kristensen, the start of last year, because he had quite a bit of hype around him, and he seemed to have played at an all right level, and he was in the national team, and he was like, Jesse knew him from his style of play and everything. He's like, okay, but I can sort of see the point of this. But then the more you watched him play, the more you were like, when's he going to be good?
Yeah,
is he ever going to do anything good?
I think I wrote him off after 5 minutes when he got pushed off the ball by Pedro Neto. Because I remember like Rob Conlon trying to talk me down after the game. I was like, nope, he's done. He's obviously rubbish. He's been pushed off the ball by a overgrown child, basically. So he's supposed to be this big, hard Scandinavian.
He does, or he has looked like a dud in the Leeds context anyway, pretty much since he arrived, which is, it's a shame. Like on a personal level, I feel for these people, but you are equally paid tens of thousands of pounds a week to do this job. So criticism is going to follow.
Belt it down the line.
Yeah, is he still doing that in Italy? Because Italy, if you are, I was going to say, if you are to kind of buy into the Italian stereotype, it's a technical league, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very tactical league. Like everything's so thought out, and the amount of times I've seen Kristensen just go, "Oh God," and then just thump it down the line. And I know sort of Mourinho is quite park the bus, but like he doesn't fit at all. He does not fit at all in how they want to play and how any team wants to play, really. Like I don't get it. I'm sure he will go somewhere else, like maybe Germany or somewhere, or maybe he will end up being turned into a centre back and do all right, because he was. I thought he is actually at his best when he played as that sort of just thump it clear centre back. In those last 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, maybe if you simplify his game and you say to him, all you need to do is tackle and give it to the midfielder.
What was Mourinho thinking? Because he's been around a very long time. Surely you'd think he's an all right judge of a player, and he can't have watched him play last year.
I suppose, is it not related back to what Chris was saying before, though, about like the level of finance within the league and the ability to pick players up who are willing to come within budget and wages are not too big, that kind of thing?
They do like to take a punt in Italy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Maybe they thought they saw something. Maybe they wanted a wing back and thought they could put Kristensen in at centre back. But like Llorente started whenever he's been fit this season, but that's partly probably because Chris Smalling has been injured since like the 3rd week of the season. But like Llorente by comparison has looked a lot better. I think he actually looks like a decent defender at that level.
Do either of them come back? It's hard to imagine it.
I don't think anyone comes back. I don't even think Jack Harrison comes back, even if he's Everton are trying to pay with him on Klarna.
Which they could be, because they've recently been deducted points, only 10 points in the Premier League, which is probably a discussion for a completely separate show another day. But
I mean, of course, Victor Orta gave Llorente that new contract to protect his value, didn't he? And then we've had £0 for him for the last couple of seasons.
It actually probably just makes it more difficult to get rid of him, doesn't it? Because I suppose,
which is what I thought when he first was given that contract. I thought, oh Christ, we're going to be paying him. But then there was the talk about, Roma, there's an obligation to buy in this loan from last season. And then it transpired fairly quickly. It was an option. And then we went down, so there was just an option to loan him again for no money. So it's like, well, obviously, we'll take the cheap version, please. Yeah. And then if we break him, it's not our problem either. You can just have him back.
Yeah, I mean, I think they will probably buy him at the end of the season if the money's right. But I can't see them spending more than like 10 million on him.
Which would probably represent a decent return, wouldn't it? Given
he's not getting any younger either, is he? He must be. He's over 30. Oh, is he? I thought he was in his 30s now.
I don't know.
Maybe he's not.
He looks like a haggard geography teacher, to be fair. So I think I'm trying to look up Diego Llorente. He's probably going to be like 32, and I've just thought because he has been around
30,
for a while.
He's 30 now.
Oh, he's 30.
Yeah, and will turn 31 in August. So you're looking at him basically turning 31 the same summer that he would sign potentially. So if you were to get some money out of it, I suppose, and from an FFP position, which again another discussion for another day, but his cost has mostly been written off, and we'd get a lot more back, wouldn't we, relative to what we owe on him.
I'm not sure what the argument is, and if you're in a negotiating room, but a 31-year-old in Italy is quite young.
Yeah,
there's years ahead of him there.
Elsewhere, then, mentioned Cellino before. Massimo, he's still doing Cellino things, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's just been Massimo.
He's threatening to sue Sampdoria, and I think he's threatening to actually take Sampdoria's shares because he says that Radrizzani still owes him for a loan that he took out to buy Ellen Road off Cellino whenever Edgar Çani bought the club. But there's no legal recourse for him to take Sampdoria shares. Unsurprisingly,
he used to always do this, didn't he? It's like when there was a winding up order every week against us because people would be billing for stuff and it was deals he hadn't agreed, but obviously in buying the club he'd agreed. But then he'd go, "Oh, we're not paying that." Then a winding up order would come in and go, "All right, yeah, we're going to pay that."
I think there's quite a long list of people. I think Mario Balotelli's suing him.
Okay.
Fabio Grosso, who was their manager a few years ago, is either still suing him to get his compensation. I think basically Cellino keeps a rotation of like 5 managers under contract at any time. Like I think Pep Clotet was sacked twice last season because of the weird there's like labour laws in Italy, and then to do with how managers can't work for 2 teams in the same season. But in the Serie B now they've taken that out. If you get sacked before the 20th of December, you can work for another team. So a lot of teams, like I think 9 teams have sacked their manager already. So like people are going early. But I mean, if you're to track it, I think Brescia have only sacked 1 manager. So I think if you wait until about April, then maybe Berardi will probably be in charge.
Wow.
So
we said that when he got that job, didn't we? We were like, yeah, he's gone in as under-19s coach or whatever, but he'll get his chance.
Eventually he'll get his chance. And if
it won't last.
And all he needs to do is a moderate job. And we were saying if you just get yourself on that level, get the platform to do it for a bit like we were talking about in the context of Michael Skubala, who's managed Leeds for a couple of games in the Premier League and has probably got the Lincoln job on the strength of that limited evidence. But you could imagine there's a similar sort of argument to be made for Berardi, and if you can tolerate working for Cellino and if you get a couple of wins or something like that.
What have his appointments been like? Obviously we know about Clotet, but in its time at Leeds it was fairly random selections sometimes. Obviously Hockaday being the most ridiculous thing that's probably ever happened to Leeds.
There was 2 managers last season that lasted for 2 weeks each, and then so it was Clotet, and then I can't remember, one was Posansini, and I can't remember what the other called the other manager, but then the guy who took over after them is the one who's just been sacked. But like Brescia did get relegated last year. The only reason they're still in the second tier is because Regina went bankrupt, so they ended up in the playoffs and have ended up going bankrupt and going down to the 4th division. So rather than promote the team who lost the playoff final in Serie C, they actually they brought back Brescia, but this was like 3 weeks into the season, so Brescia have been playing midweek games to catch up.
Oh right.
So they've lost 4 in a row before they sacked their manager, but they were like, basically Cellino said, "Oh no, I'm not going to sack him. We're fully behind him." And then between saying that and sacking him, there wasn't a match took place. They sacked him on a Friday before a match at the weekend. So I think he just said, "Oh no, just get rid of him." Do you know what? I'm sure the manager will be back before the end of the season in some capacity.
It's absolutely wild, isn't it? Is he still sat behind the dugout, do you think, barking out instructions and running things?
Yeah, one of the local, like the fan media pages said they were like sort of talking about the game at the weekend and saying how Bellingeri, who's the under-20s coach or under-19s coach was taken over for that game, it's like he'll be in the dugout but Cellino will be sitting behind the dugout with his imaginary joystick. And I was like, that's actually a really good way of putting it, because it does feel like they sacked one of the managers got sacked last year because he tried to play possession football. Like just possession football, not necessarily like Bielsa football. It was just he just wants someone to thump it long. Like that's all he wants.
Did he still like a midfield diamond? Because that's what he seemed to like at Leeds, wasn't it?
They sometimes play a diamond, sometimes play a bit more of a back 3, but it's not very exciting. Their most exciting summer signing was, I don't know if you remember Birkir Bjarnason, who played for Villa about 7 years ago, like long-haired Icelandic guy. He's like 36. A midfielder. Like he scored in his first game, but I watched him recently and like his legs are gone.
In terms of undermining the managers, has he still got Gianluca Festa stalking the corridors as well, just peeping over someone's shoulder?
I don't think so. I've got a Gianluca Festa note here. I think he's kind of him and Nicola Salerno both have just disappeared off the face of the earth. The face of the football on earth, that is. I'm not suggesting anything happened to either of them.
Sleeping with the fishes.
For the purpose of the tape.
Yeah. What do we know of the, I was thinking like the sick note 6, Antonucci, Çani, Belushi, Suleiman Dakara, Del Fabro, Silvestri have all taken varying paths since they left us.
Silvestri got in the Italy squad, didn't he?
Silvestri's quite a good goalkeeper. Like he's done quite well for himself.
Overcame the terrible back injury that made him miss the Charlton game.
Yeah, he's also got dreadlocks now. I don't know if you've seen them, but like, oh my god, he looks rare.
Yeah.
He looks so weird.
He has reframed his time at Ellen Road recently, hasn't he? He's sort of said it was a lovely experience. Didn't feel like necessarily that.
He wasn't. I do sort of appreciate he wasn't a terrible goalkeeper. A lot of his problems seem to come from smashing into defenders and a lack of communication.
Yeah,
which we did see both before and after him. So there were other factors.
Yeah, I think you could probably point to his time at Leeds and say that might have been a really good learning experience for him, because he's only in his 30s now, so he's sort of in his prime as a goalkeeper now. He spent most of his time in Italy since playing for teams who have been in and out of relegation battles.
Yeah.
But he's done well for himself, and if it weren't for like Italy having sort of 4 decent national team standard goalkeepers, he probably would be in with a shout.
It's wild, isn't it? What's Edgar Çani doing these days?
Edgar Çani is, I don't know, working in whatever the Italian Tesco is, maybe. And working in a Carrefour, because he was recently released. I was looking through I remember looking at him last season and being like, wow, he's playing in Serie D. And then I looked at it the other day, I was like, wow, he's been released by that club from Serie D. I think
Lugano, I've got him on Wikipedia.
I think he scored once in 14 games last year.
Right.
Which at that level, like,
sparkling.
Yeah.
He stood out as being a terrible footballer at a time when Leeds had a revolving door of terrible footballers. Like, you saw him and you were like, what is this?
He was one time a promising child actor.
Okay.
So, I
should
mean,
have stuck with.
Yeah, career path. He was in a TV show called Carabinieri, which seems to be like an Italian version of The Bill. He was in an episode
like
of
a
that.
police drama.
Yeah.
But The Bill, though, famously, everyone was in The Bill, weren't they? Like every single actor of the last 20 years had a little moment in there.
An appearance at some point.
But he was a 13-year-old Albanian immigrant in it. So I can't imagine whatever he's supposed to have been doing.
As a grown man?
No. This is in 2002.
Walking around on his knees with shoes attached to them.
I know Wikipedia's not always entirely accurate, but it does seem that he scored 50 goals in his entire career playing up front, which doesn't strike me as a great return.
It's not prolific, is it?
Not really. It's more the record you'd expect from a fullback who takes penalties or something.
I feel like Tyler Roberts' career will look like that when it's finished, but he offers slightly more than I imagine Edgar Çani ever did, so it's a lot more acceptable than whenever Çani's just sort of farting about, not really offering very much.
He looked like he'd be good in the air, but I don't even remember him being good in the air.
Well, hang on a second. Can I read you what it says on his Wikipedia? Because this, I think, will define his career. It says, let me just find it, style of play. Due to his height, Çani is renowned as a target man centre-forward, with his strengths being his heading ability and ability to hold the ball up to bring his teammates into the game. And do you know what the source for that is? Because obviously on Wikipedia you need to assign these to sources.
His mum.
Italian Wikipedia.
That's immediately what I thought, but no, it's the Leeds United official website.
Oh, okay. That bit of fluff.
I bet if I click through to the article from 2015, it might no longer be there. Should we see?
Just erased from history. Although actually the Leeds website has some really ropey old stuff on it that you can occasionally find.
No, it's still there.
Yeah. They've had, I think it's just a lack of organisation. I think the 49ers might just pull the plug on the whole thing at some point, but like, just pretend none of this stuff happened.
On head coach Neil Redfern, the striker added, "He's been very good. We spoke together before training and we have a good relationship." I wonder if Redders would agree with that assessment.
I don't know if he even said that.
I'm sure I've heard Redders talking about Çani before, and just basically it was a shake of the head. Was more or less just like they gave me this guy, and well,
there was
I had to play him a bit to show how bad he was.
There was a lot of that time of players signing from a team being like, oh well, like they used to be good, and so he Benedicic. It's like, well, he came from AC Milan, so he must be good. No,
yeah, he's not.
Think so.
Is he still playing? He was back in. Was this Slovenia?
He's back in Slovenia, but I don't know if he's one of these ones who's been released by his club in Slovenia and is just like gonna end up, I don't know, the Saudi third division.
He was with Eleonora Cellino, wasn't he, at some point?
Well, that was the rumour, wasn't it?
They're not a happy couple somewhere.
I can't imagine. So I can't see her giving up her life in Miami to move to like some sort of provincial town in Slovenia.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm sure it's lovely, but she doesn't seem the type.
Right, Chris, then before we head off and wrap this show up, give us you've got a sort of a quick fire list of things we need to know about what's going on in Italy, ex-players and so on and so forth. So go for it.
We need to know a bit about Edgar Çani as well. It's going well for him.
Yeah.
It's going slightly better now though, because they've won their last 2 games. So if you ever go onto like a Sampdoria fan news page, and if you just type in Edgar Çani into the search bar, go back to the start, you can work your way up to just see how it's gone. So last week it was sort of like slightly more positive, talks of new investors.
Let me guess, is it the Qataris?
I was going to say, is he still pretending he knows the Qataris?
Yeah, I think it translates roughly as an important investor, but it doesn't mean important. It's like Fabrizio Romano uses that term. It's more just like a big investor, like a big backer. But I think they basically admit that they don't have the backing to save this club by itself. They would have to get promoted this year and survive. Otherwise, like, you don't make money in that division, and I think they owe a lot of money. But they've won their last 2 games, which Edgar Çani was at. He was in the dressing room after they beat Palermo, giving it one of those there. Like, I love you so much. I haven't been here for 6 weeks, guys. Well, you've lost all those matches, but now that you've won, I'm back.
Yeah, well, they are currently, if the table is up to date, I'm looking at 15th in the 20-team league on 13 points. But you've got a couple that are quite far adrift. But there's some others down there that are within touching distance. So I bet it'd be a relieved man if they can stay up.
He was spotted in Milan having lunch with Ibrahimovic. So I know Ibrahimovic is retired, but maybe he's trying to go, well, you fancy 6 months, stick you up top, give you 50 quid a week.
Just come and do some photos, even if you don't play. That'd be absolutely fine. So, so that's Rads. What else have we got?
I'll start with a positive one. Ronaldo Vieira's career revival has been fantastic this season. He's been like the main man in midfield for Sampdoria, which people weren't really expecting because he was sent out on loan last year and sort of, I think he was done. There was the chance that it could have been the Bielsa midfield graveyard would have been Vieira, Mickey Croissants and Harry Winks would have been their midfield at one. I went to see Sampdoria play last season and they played Fiorentina and they're awful. Winks moved like the Titanic like recently, and Cuisance came on and just did not look bothered whatsoever. I think he's in the German second division now. I think he's more or less finished. Elia Capril, he's injured. He's come back from injury. He's signed by Napoli in the summer, who the same family owns Napoli and Bari,
right?
Who he signed for. So I wonder what the deal was there. The €7 million.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's at Empoli, but he's on the bench now because he's been injured for the last 2 months. So I think he'll probably end up back in the second division. But he was the Serie B goalkeeper of the year last year, so I think he's quite well thought of. Caleb Ekuban, he's at Genoa. I saw Caleb Ekuban being marked by Giuseppe Belushi in May, which was great. Belushi, like, he clearly still has it in his head, but like his body's just like a yard off the pace, and he was at fault for both the goals that day. Like, he just doesn't have it anymore, but he's been playing flat out this season because they've had loads of injuries at Ascoli in Serie B. Bianchi, as I said, he's back in the 5th division now. He's with Siena. He's actually their captain. Siena went bankrupt. They were in Serie A about 20 years ago, but they ended up in the 3rd division. They went bankrupt in the summer. There's something to do with a Russian sympathising Armenian gang involved, and I don't know
which
if I want
is
to
as
go
far as we'll go on.
Yeah,
the matter.
I don't want to get Novichoked, so I think I'll try and avoid that one. Beyond that, Dario Del Fabro, he's in Switzerland now. He doesn't really matter anymore.
The one of the 6-6 that everyone went,
who?
Wow. But why? Why have you even bothered going on strike?
He was under contract with Juventus until like last summer, something crazy like that. I'll give you this one: Andrea Dacour, son of Olivier, signed for Sampdoria.
Wow! So
you could have Dacour and Vieira in midfield for Sampdoria pretty soon.
Is he a similar sort of player to his dad?
I have no idea. To be honest,
his dad was so good.
He was brilliant. Wasn't
I can't imagine he is.
Yeah, he was one of my favourite players from that team.
And then, do you remember Federico Viviani?
Yes. I say yes. I remember the name.
Yeah, he showed up to Chesterfield, the Chesterfield game,
said,
and then no, this isn't for me, thanks. So he was at Brescia last season under Cellino, and basically midway through the season they signed Adrian, and they didn't have any more space in the squad, so they had to take one player out. They took Viviani out of the squad.
No.
So Viviani shows up to training. He's been locked out of the training ground and starts like videoing all this, putting it on Instagram, saying, I'm going to sue and this, that and the other. So he ended up training by himself for the rest of the season.
Wow.
And, well, obviously left in the summer, but I thought that was like a real Cellino moment.
Yeah.
Like two potential ex-Leeds player.
To hell with the consequences.
Yeah.
How's Adrian doing? Because he was with Berardi, wasn't he, in Switzerland for a brief period, I think.
And then he went to Brescia last season and he scored in one of the games, but I don't think he was really fit. I think he'd been like, supposedly he's like a massive poker player. So he's been up late nights playing like poker in casinos about the spot. And
what a life.
He got released in the summer. So, I mean, if even Cellino is releasing him, you have to wonder what's next for him.
World Series of Poker, I bet.
Well, yeah, him and that Dan Bilzerian guy.
Chris, thanks for coming in and giving us that update. Where can we find TMG Italia? Again, just remind us.
At TMG Italia on Twitter, tmgitalia.net for the website, where you can sign up for a free newsletter every week if you want to hear about Italian football. If you don't, sign up anyway.
Yeah, and you get your Leeds mentions in there as well.
Yeah, there'll probably be a lot of Berardi, especially once he's manager by the end of the season, and then the odd sort of, I would say, dig at Sampdoria, but if they're doing well, maybe I'll be nice about Edgar Çani for once.
Just ignore him. Yeah, don't give him the attention he craves. Right, we'll wrap it up there. Cheers, Chris. We'll see you soon.
Cheers.
The Square Ball Podcast.